Hidden deep in the barren mountains of southern Colorado lies a facility that few outsiders ever see, and even fewer ever leave. Its name is ADX Florence, but among inmates and officers, it has another title: the Alcatraz of the Rockies. To the public, it's just another prison. But to the U.S. Marshals and FBI agents who walked its endless concrete corridors, ADX Florence represents something far more extreme. A place built to contain the world's most dangerous men, those whose names shape global crime networks, terror cells, and organized empires. Every brick in its design is intentional. The concrete is soundproof. The lights are never fully off. The air smells sterile, recycled, cold, and controlled. Each cell measures just 7 by 12 feet, lined with reinforced steel, where inmates spend 23 hours a day in isolation. There are no bars to look through, no open yards to roam. The few glimpses of sunlight come through narrow, slit-like windows angled so prisoners can never see the horizon. The silence inside ADX isn't peaceful, it's oppressive. A silence heavy enough to remind even the most ruthless criminals that this is the end of their empire. When the gates first opened in 1994, the message was clear. This is where control is absolute. Only those who refuse to be controlled anywhere else were sent here. Among the first wave of inmates were names that once echoed through FBI briefings, international news reports, and criminal history books. Men who commanded armies, trafficked fortunes, or built criminal dynasties spanning continents. There was the ex-cartel lieutenant whose code name was whispered through Mexico's drug corridors. The mafia underboss whose orders had traveled from New York to Sicily. The former gang leader whose empire ran the streets of Chicago. Each of them arrived in shackles, greeted by the same steel doors and the same chilling words: "Welcome to Florence." For the staff, every day at ADX is a balancing act between vigilance and survival. Guards rotate in strict shifts, communication is monitored to the letter, and every movement is documented. Inside, the inmates communicate not through words but through patterns: a knock on concrete, a scrape of metal, or the slow rhythm of footsteps echoing in the halls. The prison's architecture itself is designed to destroy any sense of power. There are no groups, no hierarchy, no gangs, just individuals facing walls and silence. The world's most powerful crime lords, stripped of everything but time. Yet even here, within layers of isolation and surveillance, rumors persist. Guards whisper about coded letters intercepted between cells. Inmates claim that secret alliances still exist. Messages pass through library books or during brief moments in exercise cages. No one has ever escaped ADX Florence. Not one. But that doesn't stop the stories. Some say that power doesn't die inside those walls. It simply adapts. Behind every concrete door lies a story. 15 of them to be exact. Stories of men whose influence changed nations, who commanded fear long before they were locked away, and whose names still send chills down the spines of those who remember what they did outside those gates. And in this series, we'll uncover who they are, how they rose to power, and why the government decided that ADX Florence was the only place capable of keeping them silent. Because inside this prison, no one is truly forgotten, just buried behind steel and time. Inside the concrete labyrinth of ADX Florence, every door hides a story that once dominated the headlines. These aren't ordinary criminals. They're the architects of chaos, the kind of men whose power once stretched far beyond city borders, whose orders could travel continents without a trace. For the correctional officers walking those sterile halls, the names engraved on each file are a reminder what this prison truly represents: the containment of influence. Let's begin with one of the most infamous, the man once known as the Ghost of Medellin. He wasn't a loud man, nor one who appeared in public much, but through coded messages and discreet couriers, he controlled a vast drug pipeline that fed billions into South American cartels during the late 20th century. When his rivals vanished and new routes opened overnight, law enforcement realized they were dealing with someone who ruled invisibly. When he was finally captured after years of surveillance and international cooperation, the FBI called his arrest a quiet storm. At ADX, that storm has gone silent. Confined to a 7 by 12 cell, a king without a kingdom. Not far from his unit lies a former New York crime boss who once commanded an empire spanning gambling, extortion, and union racketeering. At his height, Even legitimate businessmen feared his calls. He dressed impeccably, spoke softly, and had politicians' numbers on speed dial. Now, the only sound in his world is the hum of air filtration and the distant buzz of fluorescent lights. For years, he has lived by the same daily routine. Wake, eat, think, and remember. Further down, past layers of steel and surveillance, sits a man whose criminal reach once stretched across oceans. A Russian syndicate leader known for his intelligence and precision. Before his arrest, he was rumored to have manipulated markets, laundered millions through global banks, and even financed operations that blurred the line between organized crime and corporate power. In ADX, his empire has dissolved into whispers. Still, agents who worked his case believe he continues to pull strings, not with money or violence, but with information. Because here, in Florence, knowledge can still be currency. Then there's the former Chicago gang lord, whose control over entire neighborhoods turned him into a street legend long before law enforcement made him a target. He wasn't a mastermind in suits or skyscrapers. He was a voice behind every major move in the city's underworld. His name carried weight, fear, and loyalty, but inside ADX, his power faded quickly. The isolation stripped him of his identity, reducing his world to a single cell where the walls are both his cage and his memory. Finally, there's the ex-cartel lieutenant, a man who once lived by the code of loyalty and fear. His arrest came after a decade-long hunt led by multiple agencies, and he was transferred to the United States under heavy security. Those who knew him said he was more strategist than soldier, someone who could turn chaos into profit. Today, the same sharp mind studies law books and prison policies, as if analyzing another battlefield. Each of these men once commanded entire criminal ecosystems, and now they coexist in silence. The irony of ADX Florence is not in its brutality, but in its stillness. There are no weapons, no wars, no deals to be made. Yet, every day, guards can feel the weight of unspoken power humming through those halls. Occasionally, officials intercept coded letters, written in symbols, folded in intricate patterns, or hidden in legal paperwork. No one ever confirms their meaning, but the belief persists that even from isolation, these men try to reach beyond their walls. But as history has shown, even the most powerful empires collapse, and ADX Florence is where they come to rest. Still, deeper within the facility, past even tighter security, there are inmates whose crimes transcend borders, leaders of organizations so vast they altered history itself. These men aren't just criminals. They're case studies in control, obsession, and the dark side of leadership. And in the next chapter, we'll meet them, the unseen architects of modern organized crime, those whose legacies built the walls that now hold them. Deep within the cold geometry of ADX Florence, behind layers of surveillance, lies a reality unlike any other on Earth, a place where the world's most dangerous criminal leaders exist in total silence. Each of them once commanded empires that crossed oceans, influenced politics, and reshaped economies. But here, behind reinforced concrete, their greatest enemy isn't the guards, the law, or even each other. It's time. The walls of ADX are made to break routine, to dismantle ego. Yet, among the 15 men who rule this story, there are those who refuse to fade. They find new ways to adapt, to exert the faintest trace of influence through letters, coded drawings, or legal correspondence. Their weapons are no longer guns or money. They're patience, intellect, and memory. One of the most fascinating is a former European crime strategist known for coordinating operations through encrypted communication networks long before the digital age caught up. He was captured in an international sting involving multiple countries. Each wanted to prosecute him for different crimes. Now, in ADX Florence, he spends his time reading financial law and studying international trade, as if planning something far beyond his cell. Officials call him the economist. No one knows if he's reforming or reimagining. In another wing sits a Middle Eastern power broker, once accused of funneling vast fortunes into shadow organizations. Before his capture, he was a ghost figure who negotiated peace by day and fueled chaos by night. In ADX, he walks in slow circles during his 1 hour of exercise, tracing invisible patterns on the concrete floor. Psychologists studying his behavior say he's still strategizing, mapping, calculating. even if the war is only in his mind. A few cells away is a notorious money launderer from Eastern Europe, a man whose manipulation of offshore accounts once destabilized entire financial systems. When questioned during his trial, he described his crimes as business with no borders. Now, surrounded by walls with no escape, he keeps to himself, writing equations and cryptic notes that guards later find and file away. But perhaps the most haunting figure of all is one rarely spoken about by name, the master manipulator known internally only as the broker. He never led a gang or cartel in the traditional sense. His power came from connecting others, criminals, politicians, businessmen, into one invisible web. Investigators later discovered he profited from both sides of every deal, turning war into economy and chaos into control. When he was captured, it was said the world's criminal underbelly felt the shockwave instantly. Now, his world is 84 square feet of concrete and silence. Despite the isolation, ADX Florence is entirely devoid of communication. Once in a while, guards report faint knocks, rhythmic, coded patterns that travel through the walls. Whether it's Morse-like communication or simply restless habit, no one can say for sure. What is certain is that power, even buried under steel and time, has a way of reaching outward. Psychologists who study the inmates of ADX say this prison isn't just a fortress, it's a mirror. Every man inside faces himself, his choices, and the echo of what he once controlled. Here, identity is stripped down to its core. The man who once ruled nations now folds his blanket with military precision. The kingpins of cities now wait for guards to slide their meal trays through a slot. It's an existence where pride is replaced by routine and dominance fades into memory. But some observers believe the influence of these men still lingers outside, in the systems they built, the followers who continue their legacy, the financial structures they once corrupted. In that sense, ADX Florence is more than a prison. It's a vault holding history's most dangerous minds, suspended between past power and present isolation. And as night falls over the Rockies, the prison hums quietly under a blanket of blue-gray light. The cameras watch, the doors remain sealed, and within each cell, a man sits alone with his thoughts, each one the architect of an empire that once thrived beyond these walls. Inside ADX Florence, power doesn't vanish. It simply waits, behind concrete time and the sound of its own silence.